The train stop sat alone on the edge of the high desert, a narrow platform of cracked wood and rusted iron where weeds pushed up through the boards like stubborn memories. Most folks in town pretended it didn't exist anymore. The schedules said no trains stopped there. The conductors swore they never slowed. Yet the sign still stood red hollow stop its paint, faded to the color of bone. Rachel Cole came there just before dusk, the hour when the sky bled orange into violet and the wind carried voices it didn't quite own. She wore a long coat against the cold and held a small leather satchel close to her side. Inside were letters tied with twine, old ones, written in a hand she knew by heart. She had never mailed them. She wasn't sure why she kept bringing them here. The first time she came, she told herself it was coincidence, curiosity, a need to be somewhere forgotten so she could breathe without being seen. But this was the third night in a row, and the fourth time she'd seen him. He leaned against the far post, hat tipped low, boots crossed easy, like he'd been standing there all his life. A cowboy, plain as day-dust-colored coat, dark shirt, gun belt, worn soft with age. He looked solid, real, yet something about him never quite settled into place. Like a reflection that didn't match its owner. "You're back," he said, his voice calm and deep, as if he'd been expecting her. Rachel stopped short. "For you." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Seems that way." She studied him carefully this time. The last 2 evenings, she'd been too startled to look long. Tonight, she noticed his eyes gray, like storm clouds trapped behind glass end, the way the lamplight at the stop bent oddly around him, never fully touching his face. "You waiting on a train?" she asked. "Always," he replied. "You." She hesitated. The truth felt foolish, even to herself. "I don't know anymore." That earned her a nod, like she'd passed some quiet test. "Name's Jude." "Rachel." They shook hands. His grip was warm, steady, aerial enough to make her breath catch. When he let go, the air felt colder. A distant horn echoed across the plains, low and mournful. Rachel turned toward the tracks. "Did you hear that?" Jude followed her gaze. "Yes, ma'am, but there's no train scheduled," she said, a little sharper than she meant. "There never is," he answered gently. The sound faded, leaving behind a heavy silence. Rachel swallowed. "So why does it keep coming?" Jude didn't answer right away. He stepped closer to the edge of the platform, boots stopping inches from the rail. "Some places don't forget," he said, "and some journeys don't end when they should." Rachel's fingers tightened around her satchel. The letters inside felt heavier now, like they were listening. "Have you ever gotten on?" she asked. "Once," Jude said. His eyes stayed on the horizon. "Didn't take me where I expected." She studied his profile, the strength of his jaw softened by something like regret. "Then why keep waiting?" He finally looked at her. "Because I'm not done." The wind picked up, tugging at Rachel's hair, whispering along the tracks. For a moment, she felt as if the world had narrowed to this forgotten stop. This strange man and the ache in her chest she'd carried for years. "Maybe," she said quietly. "That's why I keep coming to—" Jude smiled, then slow knowing. "Funny thing about fate," he said. "It's got a way of circling back." Far off, the rails began to hum, vibrating beneath Rachel's boots. The lamplight flickered, and for the first time, she wondered if the train wasn't coming for Jude at Albot. For her, the next evening, Rachel told herself she wouldn't go. She made supper, washed the dishes, even sat by the window with a book she didn't read. Yet, as the clock crept toward twilight, a familiar restlessness tightened in her chest. By the time the sky turned bruised purple, she was already pulling on her coat. The walk to Red Hollow felt shorter than usual, as if the land itself were urging her on. The wind carried the faint metallic scent of old rails, and when the platform came into view, her heart gave a small, traitorous leap. Jude was there, same place, same easy lean against the post, same hat shadowing his eyes, like time had never touched him. "You're punctual," he said. Rachel exhaled, half relieved, half unsettled. So are you, he smiled. But there was something gentler in it tonight. Something almost familiar. I don't have much else to keep me busy. She stepped closer, boots thudding softly on the planks. You never told me where you're from. Jude tipped his head, considering. Depends on the year. That stopped her. That's not funny. I wasn't joking. Rachel studied him. The way his coat bore old stitching no modern tailor would bother with. The subtle wear on his gun belt that spoke of a different era. What year do you think this is? She asked carefully. Jude looked past her, toward the tracks. For you or for me? A chill crept up her spine. You're saying you don't know? Oh, I know, he said. I just don't belong to it. Before she could press him, the low horn sounded again closer. This time, the rails vibrated, a living thing stirring beneath their feet. Rachel grabbed the edge of the bench to steady herself. Do you feel that? She asked. Jude nodded. Every night. Why doesn't anyone else hear it? She demanded. I asked around town. They think this place is dead. He turned to her. Fully then, eyes darkening. Because this stop only shows itself to folks who are waiting for something. Rachel's laugh came out thin. I'm not waiting. I'm just remembering. She opened her satchel and pulled out one of the letters. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but still legible. Jude didn't reach for it, but his gaze softened. You lost someone, he said. Yes, she whispered. My father. He worked a railway when I was a girl. He promised he'd take me on the night train one day. Said it stopped here only once a year. Her throat tightened. He died before he could. Jude was quiet for a long moment. Promises have weight, he said. Sometimes they keep rolling long after the person who made them is gone. Rachel looked up sharply. Is that what's happening to you? He hesitated, and that hesitation told her more than words. I was a conductor, he said finally. Long ago, rode these rails when they were young. One night, I stayed behind for a woman who never came. Rachel's breath caught. And the train left without you. Yes. The horn sounded again, louder now, echoing across the plains. Rachel could almost see it, the ghostly outline of an engine pushing through the dark, its windows glowing with borrowed light. Why don't you leave? She asked softly. Get on the train when it comes. Jude stepped closer, close enough that she could smell dust and leather and something older, like rain on iron. Because every time it comes, he said, it's missing something. Her heart hammered. What? He met her eyes. The world seemed to tilt. Rachel's pulse roared in her ears. That's impossible. Fate rarely asks permission, Jude replied. The lamplight flickered violently, casting long, broken shadows. For an instant, Jude's outline blurred, like smoke caught between worlds. Rachel reached out without thinking, her hand closing around his sleeve. Don't disappear, she said. His hand covered hers, warm and real. I won't, he promised. Not tonight. Down the tracks, the ghost train drew nearer, and Rachel realized with a sudden, dizzying certainty that whatever bound Jude to this place was beginning to bind her to. The wind carried voices that night. Rachel noticed it. As soon as she stepped onto the platform, soft murmurs threading through the whistle of air across the plains. Not words exactly, but feelings. Longing, regret, hope stretched thin as wire. Jude stood near the tracks, hat in his hands instead of on his head. His dark hair was streaked with silver that hadn't been there before. The sight unsettled her. You're changing, she said. So are you, he replied gently. She hadn't meant to come so early, but her feet had brought her without asking. The letters in her satchel felt heavier than ever, as if they were pulling her toward the rails. Do you hear them? She asked. Jude nodded. The ones who waited. The ones who missed their chance. That's cruel, Rachel said. Letting a place remember like this. Places don't choose, Jude said. People do. The hum in the rails grew stronger, vibrating up through her bones. Rachel swallowed hard. If this train comes, what happens to me? Jude turned, studying her with an intensity that made her chest ache. That depends on what you're willing to leave behind. She thought of her small house on the edge of town, of quiet mornings, and empty evenings. Of the letters she'd written, but never sent. Words meant for a man who could no longer read them. "I don't belong here either," she admitted. "I've just been pretending I do." Jude smiled sadly. "That's how it starts." The wind surged, tugging one letter free from her satchel. It fluttered toward the tracks like a wounded bird. Rachel gasped and lunged for it, but Jude caught it first. "You should let it go," he said. She shook her head fiercely. "Those are all I have left of him." Jude looked at the letter, then at her. "Sometimes holding on keeps the train from stopping." Rachel's hands trembled as she took it back. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped to the edge of the platform. The rails gleamed faintly, as if polished by invisible wheels. "What if I read them?" she asked. "Here, out loud." Jude's breath hitched. "That might wake things best left sleeping, or put them to rest," she said. Before he could stop her, Rachel unfolded the letter and began to read. Her father's words spilled into the night apologies' dreams, promises he'd never kept. The wind softened, listening. The murmurs quieted. She read another, and another. With each letter, the air grew warmer, the platform brighter. Jude's outline sharpened, his form growing more solid beneath the lamplight. When she finished the last letter, silence settled like a held breath. The train appeared without warning. It slid out of the dark, translucent and glowing, its wheels whispering instead of screaming. Windows flickered with scenes people, embracing, waving, stepping aboard with relief written on their faces. Jude stepped back, awe and sorrow warring in his eyes. "It's stopping," he whispered. "It never stops." The train slowed, doors creaking open. Warm light spilled onto the platform, wrapping around Jude like a promise. Rachel's heart pounded. "This is it, isn't it?" "Yes," he said. "For me." She reached for him, panic flooding her. "You can't just leave." Jude cupped her face, his touch tender and devastatingly real. "You gave it what it needed," he said. "Closure." "And what about you?" she demanded. "What about us?" His smile trembled. "We were always the crossing point, Rachel, the moment between arrivals." A conductor's voice echoed from the train, calling Jude's name. He turned toward the open door, then stopped. "If you want," he said quietly, "you could come too." Rachel looked at the glowing doorway, at the life she knew, at the man who had become her anchor to something larger than time. Her feet wouldn't move. Jude nodded, understanding flooding his expression. He leaned down and kissed her soft, aching, full of things unsaid. When he pulled back, tears shone in his eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. He stepped onto the train. The doors closed. The engine faded into mist, leaving behind quiet rails and a platform bathed in moonlight. Far down the track, the wind whispered one last word: "Stay." The nights that followed were different. Rachel returned to Red Hollow Stop, as if drawn by some unseen tether, though the train no longer came. The platform was quieter, emptier, yet she could still feel Jude's presence lingering in the shadows. In the creak of the old boards, in the sigh of the wind. It was as if he had left a trace of himself behind, and every step she took on the planks was a step into the memory he'd made hers. She carried her satchel, now empty of letters, but heavy with expectation. She had to see him more, feel him again. Sometimes she whispered to the wind, hoping it would carry her words to him. "Are you out there? Do you remember me?" And sometimes she thought she heard his answer, faint and distant, riding along the plains like a promise, always. It was on the fourth night, after the train vanished, that she finally saw him again, not in the glow of a spectral engine, but emerging from the shadows like he had never left. His hat dipped low over his eyes, and a small, lopsided smile touched his lips. "Rachel," he said, voice softer than the wind. "You came back?" "I couldn't stay away," she admitted, stepping closer. Her boots made no sound against the wooden planks, but her heartbeat thundered in her chest. "I keep hearing you here, in the echoes." Jude leaned against the post, relaxed but impossibly real. "The rails remember, but they only remember what you let them." You let me stay in your mind. She flushed. You were always there, whether I wanted to admit it or not. The winds stirred, tugging at their coats, whispering around them. The night was alive with the memory of the train, the hum of invisible wheels rolling past. Rachel reached out, her hand brushing against his. His was warm, steady, real. I don't understand, she said. Are you stuck here, or? I'm neither, he replied. I was bound to the stop, until I found someone who needed me to let go. You did that. His gaze held hers, deep and knowing. Now I get to be here. Not there. Here. Rachel felt a shiver run through her. Here, she repeated, as if speaking it aloud made it real. Yes. Jude smiled, a slow, heart-stopping smile. Here, with you. If you'll let me. Her heart surged. She had imagined this moment, wondered if it would ever come. And now it stood before her, solid and dangerous in its simplicity. Do you belong here? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. I do, he said, because of you. Because we both kept coming back. They fell into a silence, listening to the wind sing through the weeds and rails. The night no longer felt empty. It was full of possibility, of roads not taken and journeys yet to begin. The platform no longer seemed forgotten. It was alive, and it was theirs. Will it ever come back? She asked softly, meaning the ghost train. It doesn't matter, he said. It's done. Its job is finished. So are we. Or at least, this part of our story is. He tipped his hat back, revealing eyes that were stormy and gentle at the same time. Now we write the rest. Rachel smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Her fingers intertwined with his, and she realized that the platform, the abandoned stop, the whispers in the wind, had not been a place to wait for a train. It had been a place to wait for him. Above them, the stars spread wide across the desert sky, vast and eternal. Jude leaned close, brushing his lips against her hair, and whispered, Fate has a funny way of working. And sometimes, Rachel whispered back, it brings you exactly where you need to be. They stayed there long after midnight, two souls bound by the echoes of the night, watching the horizon and imagining the countless journeys still ahead. The rails stretched into infinity, silent witnesses to their promise. No train, no distance, just them. And for the first time, Rachel felt the platform was home. Not a place of loss, but of discovery, of connection, of love that had waited long enough to arrive. The desert night stretched endlessly, stars shimmering like tiny lanterns over Red Hollow Stop. Rachel stood on the platform, fingers entwined with Jude's, feeling the warmth of a fire that wasn't there. The wind carried the faint scent of sage and dust, a reminder of the endless plains around them. This was their place. Now no ghostly trains, no empty boards, just the quiet hum of the world holding them close. You ever think about what comes next? Rachel asked, her voice low, almost afraid of breaking the spell. Jude tilted his hat back, gray eyes catching the starlight. I've stopped thinking about what comes next, he said. I've been waiting for someone who would make me stop running. Rachel laughed softly, the sound mingling with the whispering wind. And you found me. He smiled, a slow, quiet acknowledgement. You found me too, Rachel. Somehow we both kept returning to the same place. Fate has funny ways. The memory of the ghost train lingered, a shimmering echo along the rails. Rachel's hand went to her satchel, now empty of letters, but full of stories, regrets, and moments left unsaid. I can't believe it, she whispered. All those nights I spent waiting, thinking maybe I was alone. You weren't, Jude said, not ever. I was waiting to do, and now we're both here, together. Rachel's heart ached with joy. She stepped closer, their breaths mingling in the cold night air. Then we start from here. We start anywhere, he said. But here feels right. The desert stretched infinitely, the horizon blending into the night sky. For the first time, Rachel felt like the world was not a place to endure, but a place to embrace. She realized that the ghost train had never been about moving from one station to another. It was about being ready when fate delivered the right person to her doorstep. "I never thought a forgotten train stop could hold so much," Rachel said, squeezing his hand. "Some places are like that," Jude replied, eyes softening. "They wait for the right souls to breathe life back into them." And sometimes, he paused, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "They wait for love." A chill wind swept across the rails, carrying a whisper that seemed almost like a farewell from the past. Rachel closed her eyes and let it pass, feeling the weight of old regrets lift when she opened them. Jude was there, smiling, unwavering, real. They stood in silence for a long while, the world reduced to two people, an empty platform, and the promise of a future together. No trains, no schedules, just them. The night stretched on, full of quiet laughter, gentle confessions, and the beginning of a love story that no track or time could ever erase. Jude leaned close and whispered, "No more waiting, Rachel. Just us." Rachel rested her head against his chest, heart thudding in sync with his. "Just us," she echoed, as the first hints of dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Rachel realized that the red hollow stop had finally fulfilled its purpose. It had brought her to him, and with Jude by her side, every day ahead felt like a new track, leading somewhere she had always hoped to reach. With a playful glint in his eye, Jude pulled her closer. She rolled her eyes, but laughed anyway, the sound blending with the wind and the endless horizon. Somehow, in a world of ghostly trains and forgotten stops, they had found each other, and that was all that mattered. The platform stood quietly, the rails glinting in the morning sun, holding their story like a promise. Love always finds a way, even on the most forgotten tracks. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.